Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill. Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we have our good friend, Dennis Stejskal, back on the show. We spoke with Dennis originally back on episode number 3, back at the very beginning. And then we also had a conversation with him last week that was so much fun, we decided to invite him back for one more discussion. So lots of great things going on in digital and mobile and cloud-based technology and purpose-based software and things that Dennis can shed more light on for us. So we thought we'd continue that conversation. So thanks again, Dennis, for joining us. We're excited to have another conversation.
Thanks, Mike, for having me back. I guess something must work if you invited me back after a week. So, yeah, and it's funny. Since we talked a week ago, I've had relevant conversations in the last couple of weeks that really made me think about innovation and this whole business technology, what's happening in our space, and it continues to flow in a direction I think I've personally been seeing over the last, we'll say 24 to 36 months. So it's flowing in a continuing direction, but it's getting very interesting, very interesting.
Well, that's great. Yeah, you mentioned on the last episode, and I know this well. I mean, you've been at this for about 40 years, I think. So if anybody knows what's going on and how things have gone over the last several decades, it would definitely be you.
Yep, we definitely have seen, cycles. I always looked at it in my career as we had old mini computers, which most of the listeners probably don't even know what those were. Then we moved into our Windows area and our Windows software and networks and all that kind of stuff of everything they could do. Then we got the internet, and the internet, really started showing up in operational software. Well, now we're into this next gen, I think, or this next evolution. And it's about the data. There's so many data points out there these days that it really is a little bit hard to keep track of them all. But it's typically pretty solid data if we can figure out how to consume it all. And that's a major change we're seeing is the consumption of the data and how it can be truly consumed to truly influence our businesses in a positive way.
Yeah. So what are some of the interesting things, like some samples of what you're seeing out there that are, this data collection that is new? What are some things you can share with us?
Yeah, and it's a little bit, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we chatted about purpose-based software, that, the software of today, I'm seeing a lot more is being specialized for both the role, the persona, as well as the industry that it's fit into and the trade that's being used for it. So you think about something as simple as the tracking of small tools. Small tools and tracking of them has been a need for many, many, many years. One of our industry leaders there that we partnered with for many years is a company called ToolWatch, and they've been able to help identify where was the last time we saw a piece of equipment and get it costed to the job and a variety of things there. But they weren't the manufacturers of the tools, so they couldn't measure. Who was it I was talking with? Milwaukee Tools. And here's an example of technology I just don't totally understand. But there's torque wrenches of some sort that you need to use the torque wrenches to torque the nut, I guess. And they can measure the torque of the wrench. And as they measure each one, that's a bit of data that is now, they were telling me, ties to safety, and a variety of other things that data. Well, ToolWatch, nothing against ToolWatch, couldn't do something like that because they weren't the manufacturer of it. So this whole Internet of Things that we've heard about for years, it's just getting deeper and deeper into the job site. And I think, the Hiltis and the Milwaukee Tools of the world, they've got some really neat technology these days that helps you track the tools better, truly knows where the tool is, can put, we're making the job sites that much smarter to truly know. The one I saw just recently, and I can't remember the name of the technology, but I remember talking to a colleague some time ago, and he talked about, walking by a toolbox on a job site and magically waving a scanner over it or something like that. And that was probably, I think, the conversation. And this was some technology where a good sized general contractor out of the Seattle area was looking for this type of thing and thought it'd be really cool to just scan the toolbox to know what tools were in there. That sounds kind of cool. So I'm watching this. We're having a discussion with one of these partners, and I'm seeing, or one of these companies, tool companies, and I'm seeing a little visual where they show the truck driving out of the warehouse. And they had this little device with two antennas spitting up out of the top. I forget what it was called. And I said, "What is that?" He says, "Well, we can scan the equipment as it leaves the shop anywhere up to 100 feet. And 100 feet, that's 33 and a third yards. I played football, so I know how long 100 feet is, and that's pretty incredible." And he says the accuracy is unbelievable, and so I think it's that type of technology is just an example of more data points. Now, what's the value of that data? Well, we know when the tool left the warehouse. Guess what? At the gate of the project, they had the same device. So what's it measuring? Of course, the location of the tool. Now, with job site wire meshing or network meshing going on, they can now extend that through all the floors of the building. So we know exactly where that tool is. So that's an example of technology. Maybe what they've built so far is a little bit overkill, where we look at that and say, "Well, I really be able to use that?" But we've been asking for years, where is that piece of equipment? Did that piece of equipment get left at a job site? Sure enough, it's back at that old job site. So that's kind of a neat one. Another one that I ran into is things that you really just didn't really realize you needed automation for. And this particular company that tracks rebates from suppliers. Because when a supplier, many times in the electrical market, they will, of course, electrical contractors buy a lot of stuff. And there's rebate programs on a lot of things. But when you're buying, the amount of material that some of these electrical guys are buying, you lose track of it. And so there's just dollars being flushed down the drain. Kind of the same thing if you think about productivity and you think about efficiency. If a superintendent has the authority and can quickly let a supplier know, "Hey, I'm sending someone over to pick something up because I need it." Number one, you can get feedback that the supplier has it or doesn't have it before you even send someone over to the supply house. So this whole area of field procurement is, again, an example of purpose-based software. Very specific role, the superintendent. A very specific market. In this particular case, it was electrical again, the electrical contractor. And that same concept, though, if you think about it, it can expand to any trade contractor. And there's just more and more examples of this purpose-based software around, and a lot of it is around operations, but a lot of it is consuming the data as a result of the operations activity. The rebate, well, the reason we bought this stuff is because we need it for operations to put it in the building. Well, there's a financial impact of that. Field procurement software, the ability to get the materials on the job site when we need them is a critical step, but just as important, making sure that I don't have to re-enter the PO when it comes back into the office is another huge one. And we're seeing, and again, in these really purpose-based software, companies start out as small little components, and then all of a sudden they got two very similar needs, and they got three similar needs. I think in the area we might have seen over the years software like HCSS or Bid to Win or Innate, where it's really a whole suite of software targeted at really those civil contractors with equipment. There's new companies coming out with software that really maybe doesn't cover quite the breadth, but the depth on any given thing is there. A Sign or Tenna are two new ones to the industry that really new architecture, new truly relevant technology, new technology. They just got to take a little bit of time to build all the functionality out. So lots of things happening that I think is driving the demand for innovation.
Yeah, that's a great overview and some great examples. So if you and I were to try and tap into our internal Clint Eastwood for just a minute, and you know where this is going, you bring up Clint Eastwood. Sure. Let's discuss the good and the bad as well as the ugly in construction technology. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing that's good and new?
Yeah, the good is, and this good is, I guess, also a bad to a certain degree, is there's a lot of it. There's a lot of new technology coming to the market. So sorting through what technology is the best software for me can be part of that ugly. It can be hard. It's not as easy as it used to be. Now, of course, the internet makes it a lot easier to go find it, get reviews on it, go to different boards and get feedback on it, etc. But there's a lot more of it, and that's the good thing. The bad thing is it's a little bit harder to kind of figure it all out. The good thing is it's innovative, very innovative. A lot of the new software is these point systems that are written for a very, very specific purpose. Things that 10 years we wouldn't even thought we could do software for, and so they're very, very innovative in that way. Many of them, and I talked about this in one of our last time we talked, is if the buyer, if the contractor is going to adopt a technology, he's got to make sure he's got a plan of what's the best thing. What am I really looking for? Am I committed to it? Am I committed to doing the change, to implementing it? Because if you're not, you're wasting money buying it. Don't buy it. Okay. If you're not truly willing to make the commitment to change, then maybe now is not the right time. So I think that if you do adopt with a commitment, software truly can be more, can help you improve your productivity as well as your accuracy. One of the newer, not brand new technology, been around for a while, but I think it's been proven over and over again that it's truly much more accurate, is takeoff software in the estimating world. Now, if I truly do electronic takeoff, it's going to be typically faster and more accurate than if I didn't do it electronically. And there's an example of adoption of technology for the good: faster and more accurate, faster, better quality. So it's hard to disagree with those statements that many times technology can help in those areas. And so I think the good, we got to watch it for a while. There's a lot of good out there.
That's great. So if we switch to the bad, what are you seeing that is becoming more frustrating or more evident as the good rises up?
Yeah, it probably the couple bads, I hinted at one of them. There's a lot of it out there, so it's a little bit harder to decide which one to choose. So I think you have to work a little bit more diligently on which one. And something that's near and dear to your heart is this whole concept of time capture and keeping track of time. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been kind of building up what I call a requirements list of all the things that one might look at in a timekeeping system. And there's a lot of good ones out there, and there's a lot of good ones that are very focused on niches. We can do crew tracking better than anyone, and we can do certain type of GPS tracking of where the employees are with all sorts of technology. But you have to truly figure out, what do I need and what best fits me. So having the ability to grab those requirements, I think, and truly sit down and think about them, put them together, is a way to handle the bad, meaning there's so many solutions out there. So just go in it methodically. As we look at them, I think one of the other areas that I'm seeing, or we are seeing, is we're in this whole data evolution where there's just more data than we've ever dreamed of can be. And we've been seeing that with the advent of the internet for the last 20 years, especially, about all the different data points and all the different data points. Well, if I now have many more solutions, that means I've got many different sources of data. And some people will call those data silos if these systems are not connected. And so I actually believe we're in a little bit of a data silo, I'm going to call it explosion, for a little while. And it's not because we don't have the technology to solve it. I think over the last 10, 15 years, standards have kind of risen on how you solve it. Technology and how to solve it, the type of technology has improved. It's easier to solve today than it's ever been. But one might say, well, why does that lead to more data silos? And it's because of the number of systems and types of systems out there. There's just more types of systems that produce data, and there's more of them. And if I'm going to pick again on your time capture one, if we got a bunch of time capture systems, I only got one out there, and everyone integrates it with it, well, there's probably not a data silo there. But if I got two out there, and not everyone integrates with the second one, I've got some data silos starting. Now I got three out there, and it can just multiply. And so I think that's something that we as an industry have to watch and I think standards will help there. I'm part of a group called the Construction Progress Coalition. And there's a group out there on studying construction financial reporting via XBRL. And XBRL is an international standard for XML. And I think these standard groups are working hard. We're seeing some adoption, but not enough yet. I think we need to see the market drive it a little bit harder. The contractors of the world got to say, I need to be able to what's the word? I need to be able to supply my surety agent with monthly WIP reports. And and the reason I want to do that, because if they have monthly ones, their data is going to be more accurate. And I run a great company, so my WIP report is something to be looked at. And maybe that will tend to lead eventually into a better relationship with the surety. So that's a real simple use case. But I think that standards can help this data silo. Oops, something's beeping in my office here. Must be those sensors and alarms that send data off. We'll have to watch this.
That's a data silo.
Yeah. That's a data silo. It must be. So, the bad there is, I think that data silos are going to potentially increase for a little while. The good part about it, though, I think we've got the technology to solve that. It's just the willingness by the software vendors in a lot of cases to step up and solve those silos.
That's great too. So when we're kind of joking here, but when you think about the ugly, what's the ugly in construction data? What's something that you're like, oh man, are you kidding me?
Well, one of the biggest ones I think truly is the paper companies. The paper companies, there's a hell of a lot less software being used by paper companies by construction companies these days. So my filing cabinets usage goes down. You think about all the drawings that were on paper that are now digital electronic. So just kidding aside, of course, but um, there aren't a lot of uglies. Okay, there are uglies that I think in a lot of cases we can control. If we commit to it, it usually the software solutions I'm seeing these days, I think the quality of them is better. Is there still software that has a bug in it here or there? But the overall uh, purpose of the software, the rationale of the software, the quality of the software, I think is better than it's ever been. And then to go along with it, the ability for a software company to react is even faster because I could push out a correction to something, and in 24 hours, thousands of companies can have that update running and working. So I think the deployment of software these days is definitely a plus. But it also allows us to be a little bit more innovative and to take a little bit more risk in getting that product out there. And we're seeing that happen in a lot of different places. So no real ugly, even though I think the goods definitely outweighs the uglies.
That's awesome. So when you think about companies that either have plenty of tools and maybe haven't necessarily leveraged them properly or appropriately, or maybe they just have gaps that they need to fill with technology, is there some low-hanging fruit in your mind that where a company could invest a few bucks into something and probably see a pretty quick return?
That's a tough one because, and again, where it's hard there's so much technology out there. Um, I talked a little bit earlier about takeoff. I think the takeoff technology, especially the 2D technology out there is solid. And I think the biggest thing there is just not enough companies have really bitten the bullet to say, go, we're implementing that technology. Let's do it. And, get the proper training in place, et cetera. So that's kind of a relatively one that's been around, but I think there's a lot of room for adoption. Another one is, anything to gather data in the field, be it time cards, be it photos. I think the technology around that there's a lot of it, and the integration is pretty good. I think the tool sets as well as the vendors realize that all we do is capture data and we don't ever provide it to the proper spots for consumption. It's only worth so much. So I think the software world realizes the importance and critical nature of integration. But more importantly, I think they realize the market expects it. And so we've got to supply that. So I think field capture tools, be it time, be it photos, be it issues, operational type capture tools, I think is a major spot. And there's a lot of software available. Some specializations, I mentioned field capture for procurement. I think that's a great one. If you are out in the field and you have to deal with materials, I think there's a lot of tools that are already in place. They're just waiting for companies to truly say, okay, let's do it. And a lot of some of this technology, you can adopt it from a perspective of, okay, let's roll it out on one job. Let's put it on one job and see how it works, and truly get that ROI. I was talking to a contractor in Pennsylvania weeks ago at an ABC event, and his title was chief innovations offer, something like that. And it was all about small wins. And he says, well, one of the things we do is we try to, analyze a job and see how much it will save us on a project. And he says a lot of times we will try technology on one project just to see, because it's relatively easy to do these days, and I could train a smaller group. So I think we're seeing a little bit of that happening, and rather quickly he did make a comment. He says a lot of times once we get it out there and we start working with it, we can see if it's going to work or not for us. And it's not that we didn't miss it, but we missed some requirements, and as we dug into it, they weren't there. So field capture, I think, is a great one. There's more tools, and this one's a little bit harder though, because I think it's a bigger investment. There is tools out there to help pull data together. There's more data accumulation tools, data warehousing tools, but it's also an area that I think technology is still changing. You might have heard of technology called Snowflake. It's a database type technology tool that is kind of being built to real time accumulate data. And it's going to take some time for all the people to push the data in there, but it's a little bit different type of approach on a tool. So it's one where I think we all got to keep our eyes on, but maybe not quite ready yet for all the prime time use cases. Let's see, what other low-hanging fruits? Another area, just as I look at the technology area, and you start thinking about it, and you say, how freaking obvious. Why did it take us 40 years to get there? I think safety. I think measuring safety, helping on safety. As I look, and this is the first time I've ever thought of this. I've done an analogy in the past of a construction financial manager saying, yeah, we were historians at one time, then they were kind of data analysts, and then finally they're predictors. And if you think about safety, I think it's going through a very similar evolution. For a while, everything having to do with safety was manual. Everything had to do with safety. Your toolbox talks were all manual. Everything was manual. Keeping track of training, everything was manual. And even tracking of incidents was somewhat manual. I think we're over that now. So incident tracking on safety we're well beyond that. And there's a lot of different tools out there to track what's happening, what has happened from a safety perspective. But I think that is a case of a set of innovation and tools. Moving into the second level is better analysis of the type of better analysis around safety. What types of events do they happen on certain days versus other days? Do they happen with certain crews have bigger safety incidents? So the analysis of the data, because the data is more data, and I think that the quality is better, is now in a case where it can help a safety conscious company that much more. And then that is now switching to predictive. What could we do to help prevent the accidents? And that's where the safety world, I think, is now. It's kind of been through one, and it's been through two in a rather quick manner, because 10 years ago, you didn't hear a lot about safety software. Everyone's touching it now. Everyone's touching it. And so as a result of that, I think we've evolved through that quite quickly, and we're getting into the analytical. And I throw wearables and some of that type of technology into the safety spot. If you can predict that someone's temperature their body heat is getting up where this guy's going to pass out, and you can now truly see that happen in real time and get them into the shade, get them off a job site, that's one less accident that's going to occur. So I think safety, if you don't have a strong safety solution in place, there's so much you can do with just the novel, simple portions that it's a great one to start with. Learn what you don't know, master that historian type approach, get you quickly to a little bit more the analytical approach. You can do that today probably pretty easily. There's a lot of software out there that can help there.
Yeah, that's a great one. And in fact, I shared this thought recently. We've used it for years just in presentations and discussions. And essentially, there's a reason that the rearview mirror is only like 8 inches by 2 inches on your vehicle. And the windshield is probably like 5 feet by 3 feet. And it's so you can see what's coming as it's coming. The rearview mirror is just to let you know what you ran over a ways back there.
Yeah, see where you've been.
Same concept here. And I love how you analyze that with regards to safety, real-time visibility, which leads to production. And then, managing those issues as they come up or before they come up, opposed to trying to go back and, baling wire and duct tape them.
Yep, exactly. And again, probably the biggest takeaway for myself, because I haven't thought about it, that particular one that much. I haven't spoken to that, but it's truly there's a lot of companies that are still using paper and pencil there. They're still in the analog world there. And I think that's an easy one where you can see pretty quick return pretty quickly by just doing some very simple things. And the software is better than it's ever been in that space. And I think it can definitely get you started down the development of a much stronger, better safety program.
Yeah, the tools to administer that type of a system are now in people's hands already. They're already in apps. It's already in their eyeballs. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So that was awesome. Well, another great conversation. I really enjoyed that. I thought I'd just end up with just a couple of last personal questions here. Dennis, you've been at this a long time. What's something that you've really learned to be grateful for in your illustrious 40-year plus career at this point?
Yeah, it was interesting. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago at a Sage construction group meeting, and we kind of talked about the same thing. And what keeps me kind of driving and into this space is driving down the road. And you might say, driving down the road, what the hell are you talking about? And I said that I drive down the road and I look at the buildings that have been built, and I look at the buildings that are being built. And I think about how, the work that Timberline and Sage in this construction real estate space has contributed to that. I get very excited and driven by it. And I was talking to some people the other day about this whole education market, and we got into a conversation about tilt-up buildings and what tilt-up buildings are. And it's a kind of a thing where 30 years ago I didn't know what a tilt-up building was, and just the level of knowledge that I've gained just watching these construction sites and watching them grow and watch the safety components that are now out there and how much safer our world is because of the construction we're doing. So being a part of that is probably the coolest thing I've had, is just being a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. What a great answer. Well, that's a great way to end. And as always, we've really enjoyed having you on again, and just appreciate your wisdom and your willingness to share with our listeners so much that you've gained over the years, and hopefully add to their life and improve their situation and what they're managing as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we got some shows coming up this fall, and some shows coming up in the spring. I know Con Expo is back. Last time we were at Con Expo, you all might recall, Con Expo got shut down by COVID in March of, I forget the year, but March 3 years ago. So we've come full circle on that whole thing, and hopefully we'll see some of you at some of these upcoming trade shows.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And that great point. Yeah, 3 years ago now. So that's incredible.
Yep.
So, well, thanks again, Dennis.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Be well.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.